Hi everybody, it's me, Miss Lisa, and welcome to Stitch Kids. Today the project we are going to start is a snuggly snowman. He's made of fleece and he has pipe cleaner arms and he's stuffed with polyfiber fill stuffing so he's nice and soft. To complete this project, you will need a craft kit from the South Huntington Public Library. Your craft kit includes a pattern, some colorful fleece for the hat and the scarf, a piece of white fleece, pipe cleaners, a small container that contains little pieces for the eyes, nose, mouth, and buttons, a piece of yarn, an oval-shaped piece of cardboard, some thread, and a big pile of polyfiber fill stuffing. You will need to provide a pair of scissors, some glue or a hot glue gun, and your sewing kit, which includes pins, needles, and a needle threader. Once you've gathered up your supplies, we can start sewing. Let's begin. You will want to start by preparing your pattern. Your pattern has two pieces on one piece of paper. Cut around the outside of the thick black line so that your pattern pieces look like these. Now that your pattern has been cut out, it's time to pin the pattern to your fabric. But before we do that, let's take a look at each piece of the pattern so we know how to pin it to the fleece. One piece says front and it says cut 2. So we're going to need 2 pieces of this. The other piece says back cut 1. But you'll notice there's a little word here on the side of the pattern that says fold. What this means is that we are going to place this side of the pattern against a folded piece of fabric. You'll see what I mean when we get to this piece. But let's start with the front. We're going to want to maximize our piece of fabric by putting the pieces of pattern as close to the edges as possible. So you'll see that I have the edge of this pattern as close to the edge of the piece of fleece as I can get it. To make a good cut, I'm going to pin the pattern to the fleece to hold it down nice and smooth while I cut. Maybe we'll add one more pin to keep it in place. And now when I cut, I'm going to cut along the outside of the black line. I'm going to cut as close to the black line as possible. You can pick it up if you need to and use your fingers if you need to hold the pattern against the fabric. Okay, cutting very carefully around the black lines. Just like that. Okay. You can set your scraps aside and remove the pins. Put them back in your pin pal if you have one. Or put them in a dish or a little cup so they stay safe. Okay, there's one piece of the front. Looks like there's a few little sharp edges. You can trim those away with your scissors. The fleece is kind of stretchy and slippery, so it can be hard to cut. Do your best. Okay, and we'll set that piece aside. Now remember what I said about maximizing your fabric. To maximize your fabric, you can turn your pattern pieces any way you need to get the most pieces out of your fabric as possible. So what I'm going to do with this second piece that I need to cut is put it as close to the edge again as I can, leaving some space for my scissors, and pin it down nice and secure with some pins. You can use as many pins as you need. Okay, I think I'll use one more. All right, and now it's time to cut, keeping your scissors as close to the black line and holding your pattern down as best you can. I'm using my scissors and fingers together, but I'm being careful not to cut my fingers with the scissors. Staying as close to the black line as possible without cutting the pattern, cutting around. Take your time. Okay, and there we go at the end. Now you can remove the pins and put them in a safe place. And you can set this piece aside, and you can set the pattern aside for now. Okay. Now working with this one is going to be a little different than what we usually do, because we are going to put the pattern against the fold. So let's fold the fleece. Like this. And then we're going to make sure that the pattern stays on this piece of fleece and will also be on this piece of fleece. So if you can fold your fabric, oh, how would I put it? Fold it so that it is a nice complete rectangle on this side and a complete rectangle on this side. If this part is bothering you or messing you up, these little scraps left over, we can just trim those right away. Might make this easier to see. There we go. Okay, so piece of fleece, fold it in half, and this is the fold here. Now, you're going to put the pattern with the word fold right against the fold and pin it down nice and tight. Go ahead and take your time with this so that your pattern doesn't move around too much. It's important to follow the pattern as closely as you can. That way, when you are sewing, your pieces will match up and you will end up with a snowman that is nice and round and not square or triangular, even though that would be pretty cool. Okay, there we go. Now it's pinned nice and tight, and the fold part of the pattern is against the folded part of the fleece. So now you can very carefully cut around the dark line on the outside. This is where heavy-duty scissors come in handy. If you have trouble cutting through 2 layers of fleece, you can have a grown-up come in and give you some help. It can be a little bit tricky to get your scissors to go through both pieces of fabric at the same time. I know we probably could have made one pattern for the back of our snowman, but I wanted to show you that sometimes patterns have special instructions that you need to pay attention to. And the word fold here is something that you do need to pay attention to. Speaking of pattern details, there's another little detail on both pieces of the pattern that says 1/4 inch seam allowance. What this means is that when we start sewing, we're going to bring our stitches in approximately 1/4 inch, which might be, oh, I think like a little bit like the nail on your pinky finger is about 1/4 inch. And that seam will be 1/4 inch all the way around, 1/4 inch from the edge. It's telling us this because we want to have the same seam allowance on all the pieces that we sew. So once we sew all of the pieces together, they match up. That will make more sense after we start sewing and pinning together our final snowman. So let's take the pins out of this, and you can open this up. And this is going to be the back of your snowman. Okay, you may be wondering, why is there one piece for the back? And why are there two pieces for the front when we end up with a snowman that looks like he has only two pieces together? Well, this snowman has a little bit of dimension to him. So if you look down on the top of his head, you can see that instead of being flat because he's made with two pieces, he is a little bit puffier because he's made with three. The two pieces on the back being sewn together in the middle means that he will be a little bit more round. He will take in a little bit more stuffing, which will make him a little bit more fluffy than a stuffed animal or a snowman that has only two pieces put together. The three pieces put together also allows us to put this oval-shaped piece of cardboard into the bottom of the snowman so that he will sit up. Okay, so that's why we have three pieces today instead of two. Okay, now we're ready to get started with the stitching. For now, let's set aside the back and set aside your patterns, and we are going to work with the two front pieces. Lay down one front piece and take the other front piece and match it up as best you can, like so. So now you are going to stitch along this side, leaving the outside open for now. So let's just pin along the side that you are going to stitch on. You're going to stitch along this kind of funky, oh, I don't know, it looks a little bit like a chicken or a goose shape. When you stitch along this side, eventually we will open him up, and you can see how that shape kind of looks like this shape, and those two will be sewn together. But first, we want to make this seam nice and tight before adding it to the back. Okay, when you've got your two front pieces pinned together, you can find a needle and cut a length of thread from your little spool. You can use your needle threader by putting your threader through the eye of your needle. Put your thread through the threader. It can be a little tricky holding all these things, and then pull the threader through the eye of your needle, leaving a little tail. For this project, we're going to tie the little tail to the main piece of thread and match them up like this. And then roll the thread over your fingers. Push the two tail ends through and pull it to make a knot. And do it again if you would like to make a nice secure double knot. There we go. Okay. And now you're ready to sew. So remember, you're only going to sew along the side that you pinned. Starting at one end and keeping in mind that we need to have a 1/4 inch, which is about the size of your nail, 1/4 inch seam allowance from the bottom all the way to the top. Do your best to keep your stitches the same distance apart the whole time, and you'll want them to be kind of close together because we're going to put some stuffing in our snowman and we don't want the stuffing to fall out. Okay, so that looks about right. Maybe about that distance. Hopefully you can see it. It's a little hard to see the white thread on the white fabric. And just continue all the way to the end of this piece. Okay, I'll see you in a little while. Okay, now it's time to add the front to the back, but before we do that, we want to get our arms in place. So, in your kit, take out the 2 pieces of pipe cleaner that are the longest, setting aside the 2 that are short. Decide where you would like them to go on your snowman. I think they would look good like right about here. Now, remember, when we sew, we are going to do our stitching and then turn the project inside out to add the stuffing. So anything that we want to show on the outside needs to be put on the inside before we sew. So I'm going to lay the snowman's arms down very carefully here in the middle and pin them down so they stay in place while we're stitching. This could be a little bit tricky. You might want to have a grown-up help you with that. But I'm going to lay the pin across the pipe cleaner while moving it through the fleece. Let me show you again on this side. Push your pin through the fleece, up through the fleece, across the pipe cleaner, down and up again. And that is going to hold the arms in place while you are sewing. When the arms are secure, it's time to add the front. Now, you'll notice that the front and the back don't match up exactly, and that's okay. They're not matching up exactly because we put this seam here down the front, which is pulling the edges of the fabric away from the back. And you'll notice that we've made it a little bit puffy. So our snowman will have a nice round belly. So the important thing to do now when matching up the front and the back is to make sure that the edges of the front and the back match up. Don't worry that this is not completely flat. You'll want this seam to stick up as well because when we turn him inside out, you don't want to see that seam. You want to see this nice clean line here. Okay, lots of things to think about while you're pinning. So let's get started. We're going to match up the edges of the front and the back as closely as possible. Pinch them together and add a pin. And keep doing the same thing all around the outside, like this. Going around the arm too. Remember, there's a pin inside there, so just be careful when you're adding another one. The important thing is to make sure that the fabric matches up. And then stop before you get to the bottom. I'm going to stop right about there. No, what? Maybe I'll add just one more right here. Okay. Remember, we're going to have to add stuffing, so we need to leave an opening at the bottom. I'm going to go back to the top, match up the edges of the front and the back, and pin down the other side. Keeping the fabric together. Okay, now I'm at an arm. So let's pin around the arm, being careful not to get poked by the pin that's already on the inside. Okay. So far it looks good. And I think we'll stop right there. Okay. So you'll see how he's a little poochy in the middle. That's all right. Don't worry about that. The important thing is to have the edges matched up. Now, we are making a snuggly stuffed snowman, which means that we need to leave an opening at the bottom where we can put the stuffing. Usually, to mark off where we would start and stop sewing, we would be using some tailor's chalk. But as you've probably noticed, the white tailor's chalk will be very hard to see on this white fabric. So we're going to mark our starting and stopping places with a pin that has a colorful head. And you're going to take this pin and place it perpendicular to the edge of the fabric. Perpendicular means going this way while the fabric goes this way. These other pins are going parallel to the edge of the fabric, meaning that they're going in the same direction. So there's a couple of math words that you can use while sewing. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I think I will add one more parallel pin and then add a perpendicular pin right about here. There we go. So you see the two, oops, let's put this the other way so you don't get poked while you're sewing. There we go. So we're leaving an opening that's about as long as my pointer finger, and that should be good for pulling the snowman through and putting the stuffing in. All right, so you're going to sew from one side all the way around to the other using a needle with the thread that's pulled all the way through, matched up at the end, and double knot it so that it doesn't pull through your fleece. Oops, having a hard time here with the thread, is very slippery. There we go. Okay, and we'll start here, remembering your 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is about, the length of your pinky finger nail. And then you'll want to keep the stitches as close together as you can. Remember, your snowman is going to be stuffed, and the closer together your stitches are, the less likely the stuffing is to fall out. And I'm going to keep them about the same length all the way around. So there's a lot of stuff to think about while you're sewing. Just take your time and relax. Don't rush through it. And continue until you get up to the arms. And then we have some special instructions for how to secure the arms onto your snowman. To secure your snowman's arms, you have a couple of options. You can add a dot of glue on this side of the fabric and a dot of glue on the other side of the fabric, pinching the pipe cleaner in between them, and then allowing 20 or 30 minutes for the glue to dry. You can do that on both sides. Set the whole project aside, let the glue dry, and then continue sewing as usual. If you don't want to use glue and you just want to use needle and thread to secure the pipe cleaners, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to take a needle with a double thread, double knotted at the end, and you may already have your needle in place from sewing. You can just pick up where you left off here with the sewing and go around your pipe cleaner. So I started a stitch right next to the pipe cleaner, went back through the fleece near the pipe cleaner and pull. Then come back up near your pipe cleaner. Put the needle near where you put it in the last time, making sure it goes through both pieces of fleece, and pull. Maybe do that 3 or 4 times to hold the pipe cleaner in place. You don't want him to lose his arms when you're playing with him. You also don't want him to lose his arms while he's getting his stuffing put inside too. Okay, so, whoops. I think that was 3 times. Let's do this one more time just to be sure that his arm is in there nice and tight. There we go. And now you can continue your stitches as before. Oops, I keep snagging all of these. Okay, there we go. Now we can continue stitching. I'm going to pay more attention to where that thread goes. All right, after you've finished sewing and you've removed all of your pins, it's time to turn the snowman inside out. Now remember, we had pins inside the snowman holding the arms in place, so we have to be extra careful when we're turning the snowman inside out. So very carefully put your hand inside, scooting along the seam here all the way up to the top. Push the head in and grab it with your fingers on the inside and very gently pull the head through the body. Being very careful, watching out for those pins. I see a pin head right there, and there's probably another one on the other side too. Yep, there it is. Okay, so very carefully unfold your snowman's body and take the pins out. Let's do that right away. There we go, before smoothing out the seams. Now it's safe to reach inside there with your hand and run your fingers along the seam to smooth out any folds you may find there. You'll be able to sort of see your stitches a little bit. That's okay. Don't worry about that. Do that on the other side too. And hopefully the arms are nice and secure. Okay, there we go. Now, your snowman is ready for stuffing. So start with a handful wad it up and very gently push it all the way into the snowman's body, all the way up to the top of its head, like that. And continue using a little bit at a time until he's nice and full. Remember, don't push too hard and don't put too much stuffing. You don't want to put a lot of stress on the seams. You don't want your snowman to look like he's going to explode, but you do want him to look nice and chubby. Okay. And you can see now how the front piece that we put together is giving him a little bit of a belly. And if we hadn't done that, the front would be flat, just like the back. So this is our first project that has some dimension to it. Okay. I think we need to add a little bit more to the corners. Well, are those corners? I don't know. The round parts on the side. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. To give him a nice shape. You can use your fingers to spread out the stuffing if it seems a little too lumpy. He looks nice and round. Okay. All right, that looks good. I think I'm going to stop there. I don't have too much on the bottom, so I have just enough. It's not sticking out. Okay, now to allow your snowman to sit up, you're going to insert this cardboard oval shape right here into the bottom of your snowman. This is going to be a little tricky to sew around, but I know you can do it. Okay, so you'll see that this cardboard kind of gives him a flat bottom and will allow him to sit up nicely. Okay, so once that's in there, we can pull these two pieces of fleece together and start stitching. If you would like, you can use a pin to hold the pieces of fabric together while you stitch. So this could be a little tricky. You may need a grown-up to help you. Fold this fabric in just a little bit and pin it if you would like. Okay, you know what? I think let's start on the other end. To fold these little pieces of fabric in. There we go. Now it's working. And pin. This will help hold it together while you're stitching. Okay. All right, you know what? Let's sew a little bit here. Then we'll take out the pin and we'll fold it and sew, and then sew along this side. Okay, so you'll need to have your needle with your thread doubled up. You may already have some left over from when you were stitching the body. And we'll make a double knot. At the end. Oops, it looks like I missed. Let's try that again. There we go, double knot. And now we're going to work on a little bit of a hidden stitch, which means that we're going to kind of sew inside the seam where the two fabric pieces come together. It can be a little tricky. Don't worry if it's not perfect. The important thing is to sew him together so the stuffing doesn't come out. I'm going to use the needle to push some fabric in if you see that, what they call the raw edge of the fabric, you can push that in with your needle. We're going to try to hide that raw edge with these stitches. I'm not doing a perfect hidden stitch because there's not a lot of fabric here to work with, but that's okay. This will be on the bottom. You shouldn't see it when your snowman is sitting on your bed or on your desk. Or maybe on your living room sofa. Who knows? Who knows where your snowman will end up? Hopefully you'll be able to enjoy your snowman all year long. Okay, so we're pushing the raw edge in, almost at the end of that pin, and then I can take it out. So far, so good. And remember, this is a little hard. You might need a grown-up to help you. And definitely remember to take your time. There's no hurry here. If he's pinned together, you can put it down and come back another time and finish, and the stuffing will stay inside safely. Okay, you can see the raw edges are hidden inside. I'm keeping the stitches as even as I can as I sew. Okay, let's take this pin out. Let's see how he's going. There we go. Okay. Push these raw edges together. I'm sorry, those were not raw edges. Folded edges together to hide the raw edges. Okay, you know what? I think I'm going to take this pin out too. I think it's kind of messing us up. There we go. Sort of staying together by itself now. Probably noticed by now that a lot of sewing can be problem solving. Like, what's the best way to do something? And if you think of a way that's better than what you see here in this video, then that's what you should do. The most important part is to have fun. This shouldn't be frustrating, and you shouldn't worry about whether or not your creation is perfect. Your creation is made by you, and that's what's great about it. Every snowman that this group of Stitch Kids makes is going to be different. All right, and unique, just like all of the stitchers who are stitching. I'm at the end. I'm going to slide my needle under the last stitch, find the loop, put the needle through the loop and pull to make a knot. And because I like double knots, I'm going to do it again. Pull it through, put the needle through the loop and pull, and then very carefully trim the thread. And we can trim over here too, back at where we started. And now your snowman's bottom is complete. Okay, so your snowman should sit up like that by himself or by herself. And now let's talk about decorating your snowman. As we were sewing and we talked about our pattern, we were talking about these two small pieces as the front of the snowman. And this can be the front of the snowman if you would like it to be. You can decorate the front of your snowman with the materials inside this little cup. You have a piece of orange felt which looks like a carrot for a carrot nose, and a bunch of little pieces of sparkly foam that you can use for the eyes and the mouth. You can add those things using glue to the front, but you'll notice that the front has a seam running down the middle of it. If you don't like the way the seam looks, you can turn your snowman over and you can call the back the front. That's what I chose to do with this one. You can see this one has no seam running down the middle, and I put all the embellishments on the back, leaving the seam, which used to be the front, to the back so no one can see it. It's up to you. You can do it either way. It will look cute no matter which way you choose. I'm going to add the face to what used to be the back and is now the front because it's nice and smooth. And for this, I would recommend using some kind of glue like a tacky glue or an Elmer's glue. I would not use a hot glue gun because these pieces are very small. They're hard to hold on to, and you might burn yourself with a hot glue gun. You'll notice that these pieces have a sparkly side and a dull side. You can choose which side you'd like to be on top. I'm going to have the sparkly side showing. I'm going to do a couple of eyes. And the nose. Put the glue around the edges here of the felt. And you'll see there's a seam. Let's make that the bottom of the nose. So make sure that that seam is pointing down toward the flat bottom of your snowman. And press it down for several seconds. Like that. And then you can continue. You have enough of these little black dots to make a mouth, eyes, and buttons. Okay. And you can put on as many or as few as you would like. I think I'm going to leave just one for the mouth today. And put 3 buttons going down his belly, like that. Okay. When you're finished with the face and the buttons, you can set the snowman aside. We'll work on the arms after these embellishments dry. So let's set this aside for now. And work on the hat. The hat is very easy. If you would like to sew the hat, you are more than welcome to do so. All you would need to do is fold it in half, thread up your needle with some extra thread that you may have from this project or a project in the past, and just do a whip stitch from one end to the other. Then you would turn your hat inside out, leaving a rectangle just like this one, and follow the next steps. However, if you don't feel like stitching anymore, you can use some glue to bind the sides of your hat, like this. Just put a nice line of glue along the side and then fold the other piece of fleece over onto the glue. Press it down so the glue catches. And before we add the bow and the cuff on the hat, we'll let this dry as well. So we'll set that aside. And while that's drying, you can finish up the scarf. So we're going to just take a pair of scissors and make a few snips in both ends of this fleece strip to to make the fleece strip look like a scarf. Okay, just like that. Okay, and then we'll set this aside too. We'll dress up our snowman after everything is dry. When your snowman's embellishments are dry, it's time to work on the arms. And I'd like to make these arms look like twigs, kind of like I did with this one here. They're nice and bendy, so you can make them into any shape that you would like. I think that this arm is a little bit too long. I'd like it to be a little shorter, so you can take a scissor, a heavy-duty scissor or wire cutter, and just trim it. I think maybe we'll trim a little off this side too. Okay, your kit included 2 small pieces of pipe cleaner that you're going to use to make fingers on your snowman. And I'm going to do that by making an X shape on the arm and twisting the fingers around like this and bending part of the original stick part down so that his fingers are nice and soft and not too sharp on the ends. And then if you'd like to give him an elbow, you can bend an elbow like that. He looks like he's waving. And we'll do the same on the other side. Make an X, twist the small pipe cleaner around. Now you have 3 fingers. Bend the tops of them down toward, I guess, what would be the palm of your snowman's hand. Like that. And there you go. And you can make him, now he looks like he's dancing. Okay. To add the scarf, this is very easy. Just going to tie it around his neck very carefully. If you would like your scarf to be thinner, you can fold it like I'm folding this one now, or you can trim it with the scissors. It's up to you. Okay, and there's a scarf, keeping him nice and warm. And now for the hat. When your hat is dry, you can fold up the bottom of the rectangle like this to make a cuff. Like you might put a cuff at the bottom of your pants, or you might make a cuff at the ends of your shirt sleeves, like this. This kind of gives the hat a little bit more of a finished look. Now, let's try to move this seam to the back of the hat just by rolling it around. And now you can see the seam is on the back and there is no seam on the front. The piece of yarn in your kit is used for pinching the top of the hat to make it look a little bit like a puffball hat. I'm going to just tie that around the top. You can go as close to the top as you would like. Oh, let's try to get it more in the middle of the hat. There we go. That looks good. And you can tie it in a bow. There we go. And if you would like to make the top of the hat look a little fringy, like the bottom of the scarf, just take your scissors and snip some little strips into the fleece at the top of the hat. That might be kind of fun for your snowman to have a fun hat. can make them any width that you would like. You can make a lot of little ones or just a few big ones, it's up to you. And then you can use your fingers to kind of fluff it up a little bit. There we go. And now, very carefully, you can put the hat on your snowman's head. And now he's ready to enjoy. Congratulations on completing your Snuggly Snowman. I hope you had fun stitching. Thank you for stitching with me, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Take care.